Hello and welcome to Subversive Radio. I'm your host, Keith Giles, and we have been going through, well, I guess on my blog, I should say, I've been going through a little bit of a series on the end times, and it all started with the blood moon prophecy, and I wanted to clear up some things surrounding that, and then out of that, it sort of snowballed a bit into things like when was Revelation written, and the mark of the beast, and who the beast is, and what is the mark of the beast, and all that kind of stuff. And so I've kind of gotten, I don't want to say sidetracked, because it is important, and it is something that, again, I would only have done these things, I have only done these things because they are the kinds of things that people on my blog and on Twitter and on Facebook are talking about, and I have received questions about this, and so I just want to address it. But I want to assure you, this is just a brief little detour. I'm only going to spend a little bit of time on my blog and on podcasts talking about this. I don't want to be some kind of end times Bible prophecy guy. That's not my wheelhouse. That's not my strength, to be very, very honest. It's probably the weakest area of my personal theology is end time stuff. And so because of that, I don't feel, a lot of confidence that I've got a whole lot of expertise in this area. I have not studied and read a whole lot on this. But I've done enough that I think I can shed some light on some areas that a lot of Christians don't seem to be aware of. And so this is one of them. We're going to talk about the mark of the beast, and who is the beast, and what is the mark of the beast, and what is it not. And just even based on the comments that I've received from the articles that I've written so far on my blog, this is the perspective I'm going to give is not the mainstream perspective, and it's not the perspective that I grew up with. I grew up, being taught this is what the end times are going to look like, and this is what the Antichrist is, and this is what the beast is, and this is the tribulation, and these things have to happen, before Christ will return, and all these kind of things. So, all the very, very much like the, the Left Behind series, or there was one before that. Gosh, I just went blank. But there was one in the 70s that was a really horrible, cheesy end times film series before Left Behind. And anyway, but that's very much what I grew up on, and probably what most of you have grown up on and have heard and hear on a regular basis. And I'm going to present to you just sort of the other side of that coin. So most of what we grew up with is called the futurist camp, the futurist position. And that, again, is those people that believe that when they read Revelation or Daniel or Matthew 24 and things like that, that all of those scriptures are about things that have not yet happened. They are signs of things that are going to happen in the future, okay? Now, again, that's what I grew up believing, but over time, I have come to abandon that view. I no longer hold that view. And what I now believe is that Revelation and Matthew 24 and most other New Testament scriptures, and even Daniel, are dealing with prophetic events about things that when they were written were in the future, but for you and I in 2014 and beyond, they are events that have already taken place for the most part. That position is called the preterist position, or a partial preterist position. I don't want to parse that too much. I'm not a full preterist, meaning I don't believe everything has already happened and that there's nothing we're looking forward to. A partial preterist, though, believes that most things that are in Revelation and Matthew 24 and Daniel have occurred. The one thing that hasn't happened, of course, being the physical return of Christ, the return of Christ, or the second coming. So anyway, because I'm not a futurist anymore, because I no longer believe that anymore, when I read Revelation, I don't read it as a book of things or events that I'm still waiting to see fulfilled in my lifetime, okay? And therefore, I don't believe that the beast is someone who is going to show up one day in the future in the Middle East. I don't believe that the Antichrist is a person who is going to be the leader of an anti-Jewish or anti-Christian movement or government. And therefore, I don't believe that the mark of the beast is something that anyone is ever going to try to put on me or my children. But why do I believe that, and what's the evidence for that? So, because I see Revelation specifically as being a prophecy about the destruction of Jerusalem, which happened in AD 70 under the Romans. I see then these things as being already fulfilled, and so here's why. Okay, John wrote the epistle, and it's a letter. Revelation is a letter that he wrote to 7 churches, and at the very beginning, he makes it very clear. He says in verse 1, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show to his bondservants the things which must shortly take place. That's verse 1. And then in verse 3 he continues to say, and the one that heeds the things that are written in it, for the time is near. And John, throughout the book, uses words and phrases throughout Revelation that in the Greek are meant, or are words that mean, phrases that mean shortly, without delay, soon, in a short time, the time is near, or about to take place, etc. And so, if you and I were Christians in the first century, and we got a copy of one of these letters of Revelation that John wrote to us, and we opened it and read it, we couldn't help but believe that we were reading about things that John wanted us to know about, because in his own words, John was telling us these were things which must shortly take place and that the time is near. Okay? Not 2,000 years plus beyond us. And why did he bother to send us this? Because he wrote to them with some urgency saying, take heed to this because it's going to take place very soon and the time is near, and those kind of things. So, if that's the case, then we should be able to identify the beast from Revelation, because if John's writing to Christians in the first century about events that are going to happen quickly, then the beast must be someone living at their time period, living contemporary with John and with them. And that's, in fact, what John describes. John describes the beast as a person, Revelation 13:18. But he also describes the beast as being several people in Revelation 17:10, or as a government or a kingdom, which happens in Revelation 17:9. So in other words, when he talks about the beast being sitting on 7 hills, he's talking about it as sort of as a kingdom or as an empire. The Roman Empire sat on 7 hills, okay? But then he also talks about it as a beast with 7 heads wearing 7 crowns, and he tells us in Revelation 17:10 that these 7 heads and these 7 crowns are 7 kings, okay? Again, contemporary to him. So, by the way, also the Christians that he was writing to would have been familiar with the prophecies in Daniel 7:17, where Daniel talks about 4 beasts, and those 4 beasts correspond to 4 kingdoms or 4 empires, right? And so they would have read when John talked about the beast, and it had 7 heads. They would have been able to very easily understand, with the clues that he gave them, that the beast sits on 7 hills, that it was, in fact, the beast was the Roman Empire. Okay? But there is a person referred to as a beast as well. And so let's look at that. And there's something here that I want to talk about. Part of the reason why John kind of seems to write in code is a very simple reason. One is that John was held captive. He was exiled by the Roman government. We'll look at in a minute who did that to him. But he was exiled to the island of Patmos because he was seen as a threat to the Roman government. And so they were afraid of him. They were afraid of the influence that he held over Christians in the Roman Empire. And so for him to write a letter to those churches, it was obviously going to be read and possibly censored. So 2 things. One, because he didn't want it to be censored, he wrote about a lot of plagues, horrible, horrific things in his letter. And then at the end of the letter, he warned that anyone who touched it, changed it, altered it, added to it or removed anything from it in any way would receive the same plagues upon them. So that was a warning to those Roman guards, or the Roman censors. Dare they touch or change his letter, that all those things would come upon them as well. That's why he says that, by the way. The other thing is, he uses a code when he talks about the identity of the beast, right? And this is where we get the number of the beast in the first place. He says to them, he says in Revelation 13:18, he says, "Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast. For the number is that of a man, and his number is 666. Okay, he's speaking in code here. He doesn't want to just come flat out and say, hey, the beast is the Roman Caesar, because that would be seen as seditious and subversive. And he was already being held captive on Patmos. Perhaps they would cut his head off if they felt like he was, writing something directly against Caesar. And secondly, perhaps they wouldn't even, not only would they possibly kill him, they would suppress the letter completely, burn it, destroy it, and not even allow it to get out. He wants the letter to get out. He wants Christians to read what he has to say. So if he wants the letter to leave the island of Patmos and to reach the eyes and ears and hearts of the Christian church, he's going to have to write in some code, and some confusing code to his captors, to the Romans. It would be confusing, but not confusing to Christians, specifically to Christians who could speak Hebrew. So when he says the number of his name, what he's talking about is there's something where the Hebrew alphabet, the symbols for their alphabet, for the A, B, C, D, etc., are the same symbols for their numbers. Okay, we of course have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 10 for our number system, and then we have an A, B, C, D to Z for a letter system. But the Hebrews didn't have that. Their alphabet was their number system. Okay, and so when he says that the number of the beast is a number of a man and the number is 666, it's a code to tell them, convert the name Nero Caesar to Hebrew, and that is in their alphabet, NRWNQSR. That spells Nero Caesar in Hebrew. And since the Hebrew letters doubled as numbers, it's very easy to just add them up. So if you write out Nero Caesar in Hebrew, and then you add up each of those letters, each of the values, guess what it adds up to? Nero Caesar in Hebrew adds up to 666. Now here's a fascinating little tidbit for you. If you were to read Revelation in a Latin manuscript at the time, okay, there were early Latin translations of Revelation, of the New Testament in general, but when you were to read the Revelation in the Latin version, when you got to that verse, it wouldn't say 666. It would say that the name, it would say his number is 616. In other words, 616. In fact, some of your study Bibles, if you go and look at Revelations 13:18, there will be a little footnote that will say some manuscripts read 616. Well, why is that? Why would the number be 666 in some cases, but 616 in the Latin version? Well, here's why. Because if you were to translate it in Latin, it doesn't add up to 666. It adds up to 616, which again, you're still dealing with Nero Caesar. Therefore, Nero is the beast that he's talking about. Here's another reason we know that the beast was Nero. In Revelation 17, 9 through 10, we read this. Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits, and they are 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 now is, the other has yet to come, and when he does come, he must remain a little while. Okay, so we've already talked about the 7 mountains. That's the 7 hills of Rome. But what's this whole thing about the 7 heads are 7 kings? 5 of them have fallen, 1 of them now is, and the other has not yet come. All right? If you start counting Roman history, the first king or the first Caesar of Rome is Julius Caesar. Okay? The second one is August. The third is Tiberius. The fourth is Caligula. The fifth is Claudius. Okay? Now, John says that there have been 5 kings of Rome, the beast. There have been 5 of them, and those have died. It says 5 have fallen. But one of them, that's the 6th one, now is. Guess who the 6th Caesar was? Nero. That means Nero was the Caesar who was alive at the time John wrote Revelation. And so we know, therefore, that Nero is the living head of the beast, okay, at this time. All right? He's the one who now is. And this is just as an aside, when he says that, he goes on to say, the other has not yet come, and when he does come, he must remain a little while. The Caesar that followed Nero, his name was Galba, and just as John prophesied, he only reigned about 7 months, and then he died. So that's in fulfillment of John's prophecy. Okay, here's another thing. Nero, as the 6th king, or the 6th head of the beast, the 6th king of Rome, or 6th Caesar of Rome, he persecuted the Christians in the first century. His persecution began in November of 64 AD, and it ended June the 8th in 68 AD, and it ended because he killed himself. Now, that was about 42 months. So for 42 months, Nero persecuted the church. But notice what John says about the beast in Revelation 13:5. He says this, and there was given to him a mouth speaking arrogant words and blasphemies, and authority to act for 42 months was given him. 42 months. Now, let's go back again. How long did Nero persecute the church? 42 months. According to John, Nero was given the authority to act against the church for 42 months. Coincidence? I think not. John is going out of his way to let the people know that the beast has a name, and that in the Hebrew, the number of his name added up to 666, that he was the 6th and current king or Caesar of Rome, and that his persecution against the church would last exactly 42 months. All of this is from Revelation. Now, there are proofs outside of the Bible that Nero was the beast. There was a pagan writer at the time, he lived at the time, his name was Apollonius of Tyana, and he said that Nero was a beast. He says, quote, in my travels I've seen many wild beasts of Arabia and India, but this beast that is commonly called a tyrant, I know not how many heads it has, nor if it be crooked or claw, and armed with horrible fangs, and of wild beasts you cannot say that they were ever known to eat their own mother, but Nero gorged himself on this diet. And he said this because Nero did murder his parents and his brother and his pregnant wife and other family members. We also know that from history that Nero enjoyed dressing up as a wild beast, and he would rape prisoners, both male and female. Okay? And by the way, all of the earliest church fathers, from Irenaeus in the 1st century all the way to Saint Beatus in the 8th century, all of them agreed that the beast was Nero. Not that it matters to us whether they believed it or not. We have plenty of evidence just from Revelation itself that Nero is the beast. Now, you might say, well, but doesn't it also say that you have to have the mark of the beast is, without the mark of the beast, you won't be able to buy or sell in the marketplace? Isn't that something that's going to happen in the future? Well, see, no, because that also was true of Nero and his quote-unquote mark. Roman citizens were required to publicly claim allegiance to Caesar by burning incense in his honor and proclaiming Caesar is Lord, publicly and out loud. And if they did this, they were received a document. And that document allowed them to buy and sell in the marketplace. And without it, no one could purchase anything. So in other words, unless you pledged allegiance to Caesar and said, Caesar is your Lord, you couldn't buy or sell in the marketplace. And so the mark of the beast was this document that showed your allegiance to Nero as Lord. And that was what you needed to buy and sell if you lived during the time of John and you lived in the Roman Empire. Okay? So, in conclusion, the mark of the beast. It's not a microchip. It's not a barcode. It's not your credit card. The beast was a guy named Nero who lived 2,000 years ago. Okay? The mark of the beast was a number of his name which added up to 666. And we're told that the beast would reign in terror for 42 months. And by the way, it did, because Nero's persecution of the church lasted exactly 42 months. And there you go. So I hope that's simple. I hope that makes sense to you. If you have any questions, please let me know. Post it on my blog, or email me, or you can contact me on Facebook or Twitter. I would love to talk to you about it and clear up anything I can. And I would encourage you, by the way, there are some great books that are out there. My good friend Steve Gregg has an excellent book on Revelation. I believe it's called Revelation 4 Views. And that'll show you across the board, not just the preterist view, but all the other views of Revelation and the end times and that kind of stuff. And I can recommend some other books as well. Maybe I'll do that on the blog coming up and just maybe recommend a lot of books. But anyway, I hope that makes sense. And again, if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for listening. We will talk again. I probably will do another podcast coming up on the dating of the book of Revelation, because that's in dispute. Some Christians believe that John wrote Revelation after the destruction of Jerusalem, and therefore it can't be about a future event, which I would agree. If John wrote it after the destruction of Jerusalem, then what he's writing about is not about something happening in the future, but about something that already happened, or about something that hasn't happened yet. But if we can prove, or if there are good reasons for us to believe that Revelation was written before AD 70 and before the destruction of Jerusalem, then it makes a whole lot more sense to apply it to what happened in AD 70. So I will. I've already written a blog. If you want to go to keithgiles.com, you can read it. I wrote a blog called 10 Reasons to Believe Revelation was Written Before AD 70. But I will also do a podcast version of that as well. So if you're waiting for the podcast, that'll be coming up soon as well. Anyway, thanks for listening. God bless, and let the kingdom come. Good night.